Welcome back, everyone, to another Unrested Saturday. No, I don't edit my voice when I do that. I always get that question. Do you change the pitch in your voice? No, that's my metal voice. I can sing metal. I've always been able to sing metal, so that's my metal voice. Guys, I'm gonna keep this a kind of a friendly chat between you and me for this Osoroshi Saturday. It's a little bit different than normal. And that's because I want to talk about something a little bit different than just normal paranormal and ghost type stuff. I want to sit down with you right now, go get maybe a drink and some snacks, and come chill out with me, Unrested. You and I, we're friends, because if you're watching my channel, we're friends. And I want to tell you about some of the scariest things that have ever happened to me in my own personal life. Because recently I started doing a series called Get to Know Unrested, and I felt like, hey, you know what? If people really want to get to know me, they should get to know a couple of experiences that I've gone through. And why not do one about scary experiences for my Osoroshi Saturday show? Take a seat, come chill out with me, get a drink, get some popcorn, some snacks, whatever your favorite snack is, and let's chill out. Let's start with my first story. My very first story was when I was about 14 years old and I was in Boy Scouts. Yes, I was a Boy Scout. I love wilderness survival. I actually quite enjoy nature, even though I live in the city. And I was going for my wilderness survival badge, which is one of the many, many badges in Boy Scouts. And all we were given was a sleeping bag and a canoe to canoe out to an island that we would stay on. We had a Boy Scout master posted out there who would help us should we get into any kind of like first aid situation. But aside from that, we were given only a sleeping bag. I remember we were given a thing of raw meat, we were given tin foil, and we were given a carrot. I don't know if that's how everybody's wilderness survival badge goes, but that's how mine went. And I remember this being a very exciting time in my life. I was very excited to get this badge. It was the one that I had wanted for a very long time. I had gone through everything else in the book to get it, and I was very excited to get this. I would honestly do this badge again if I could, because it was that exciting to me. I remember I had to make a teepee out of like wood and leaves and stuff, and I remember it ended up looking like whale bones the way I created this giant tent for my friends and I to sleep in. It was a lot of fun. So anyway, this concerns with me getting to the island. We got there when it was already starting to get dark, and so the first thing we did was work really hard on making our shelter, because if it rained that night it would totally suck. Luckily for us it did not, but we did have a pretty good shelter, and we did have our sleeping bags under it. It wasn't enough to stand up, but it was, good enough to crawl in there and sleep for the night. And since this was going to be the first time ever where we weren't going to have a scoutmaster patrolling and making sure that we stayed in our tents for the night, we thought it would be fun to sneak out, because we were adventurous. Hence we chose to join Boy Scouts. And we got into that little canoe that they had given us, because we thought, now is a chance to do anything we want with this canoe, because no one's here to tell us when and where we can go with it. So we snuck out, and we got into the canoe, and it was probably like midnight, which is pretty late for the middle of the forest because there's no lights. And we started paddling out into the middle of this kind of marshy area that the island was a part of. Now, let me tell you, this island was not far from shore. We could get to the mainland really fast if we wanted to. It was probably like a 14 or 15 minute boat ride with rowing, not motor. But we were like, you know what, we're going to explore all around this island and check out this gigantic marshland that it's connected to. It was a lake that connected into all these little marshland paths and creeks and everything, and we were pushing back into it so far that, like, branches were hitting us in the face and spider webs and crap like that. But then it finally pushed open to a big mouth that got into a secondary lake, and we were always told we were never allowed to go explore this lake, and I was always like, that's bullshit, we should check it out, I'll bet you it's awesome, that's why they're telling us not to go there. Well, there was a pretty good reason why they told us not to go there. As soon as we got there, we noticed bumps like all around the lake, and we thought, oh, these like little tiny islands that we could go jump onto, maybe like There's even some smaller ones there that looks like maybe someone could just literally stand on it and that's it. They'd have to get back into the boat after that. And we were stoked about that we thought that was so cool. We could just stand on our own little tiny island, like a, I don't know, like someone who was in, what do you call it? Castaway. Yeah, that's what it is. With Spaulding and all that. And we got ourselves really far out there, and we saw one out in the distance that looked to be moving around. We were like, why is that little tiny island out there moving around? Why is it like bobbing back and forth? And so we paddled out to it, and it bumped really hard against our canoe. And that's when we realized that wasn't a tiny piece of land. That was a giant alligator. You see, I lived in Florida at the time, and one thing Florida is very well known for is alligators. And I had seen alligators from a distance many times before, but until you see what an alligator looks like up close and you see how incredibly enormous they can get, you don't really feel any kind of fear until you reach that point that you're up next to one. We got up next to one and it bumped literally right into our canoe. And that's when a huge splash and a movement in the water that showed us the size and girth of this thing was shown to us. And it was one of the scariest things I ever experienced in my life. We literally stood and I guess sat perfectly still in that canoe. We were freaked out. It came back up a few feet away from us and stared at us for a while. We stared back at it, and we did not move. We probably didn't move for like a good 5 minutes. We didn't even peep or whisper or anything to each other. We all knew it was an alligator. And we waited for that gigantic, and I mean, this thing must have been like 15 feet big. It was massive. And I'm talking head to tail now. I'm not talking its body was 15 feet, but head to tail, it was like 15 feet. It was massive. Like, you could see a gigantic amount of water moving as this thing pushed its way through the water. We wait for it to dip back down, and we paddled faster than we had ever paddled in our life back to that camp. And I remember the next day my arms and wrists were so sore from how ferociously hard we had marathon paddled back to camp. One of the scariest times in my life. Alright, story number two. Story number two concerns my scariest trip I ever had to a haunted house. And I'm not talking, Disney's The Haunted Mansion. I'm talking a for real quote-unquote haunted house. My friends and I had together purchased a very large book. It was Bible size, like that thick, called Haunted America. And the book called Haunted America had a listing of every single state in America and areas, houses, plots of land that were supposedly quote-unquote haunted. Now, my friends and I went around and we checked out damn near everything in Jacksonville, Florida that was supposedly quote-unquote haunted. And for the most part, we were pleasantly unsurprised. I remember we went to one place that was like Indian burial grounds, because you got to go to Indian burial grounds if you're going to check out haunted places. And it was pretty much just like orange groves, and that's all it was. There was supposed to be another place where if you drove your car out there at midnight, it was a plantation where slaves had been hung, and at midnight you would supposedly hear a big thunk on the top of your car as a lynched body would hit the top. The ghost of a lynched body would hit the top. And I just remember my friends taking me out there and telling me to stare at the road, and then constantly trying to hit the top of our ceiling of the car to make a thumping sound to scare me. And every time I would just see them move in my peripheral vision and be like, you just hit the top of the car. I saw that. I'd be like, no, just keep looking at the road. Boom. No, just keep looking at the top of the road. Boom. Okay, so not scary. Another place that we went to, and I think this is probably something that every single state has a site like this. Supposedly, you could take yourself to a point in the road where a motorcyclist had been hit by a car, and you would see ghost lights come up the road and disappear into nothingness. And eventually we learned that there was something with like the event, the vanishing point on the horizon, that if you looked at it a certain way, car lights would always disappear. So it was just kind of like a trick of the eye. So that wasn't scary at all either. So finally, the place that we went to that was the scariest was a place that had a great name, and it was in the middle of Tallahassee. Many of you might know it. I think it's been torn down now, because I remember we tried to go back there and it wasn't there anymore, and it wasn't one of those situations where like, oh my god, the place we went to last night's not there. It was called Sunnydale Asylum. Sunnydale Asylum was an asylum supposedly for children. Now, I have no proof behind the fact that it actually was an asylum for children. But it definitely was an asylum. I know for the fact that when I went in there, there was very old school asylum equipment. And there was everything from like the tables to like old lobotomy rooms and stuff like that. So it was legit as far as that. And we went in there. That place was so creepy. There was so many different things in there that made it so creepy. The things that stick out in my mind the most are, as soon as you walked in, it said, "Welcome to Hell." Someone had spray painted that there. And I remember when we got to the top, someone had spray painted "Escape Here," and when you open up the door, it just dropped off like 5 stories to the ground. Like, I don't know if a balcony had been ripped off, or like there used to be a stairwell there, or what the hell it was, but I guess someone realized right away, well, that's really scary that a door opens up and you just drop 5 stories. Luckily, no one tried to like walk through the door. We were cautious with every single place we went into in that building. There were also very strange walkways that were built into the side of the wall to get to different parts of the building. For example, there'd be like a stairwell going down like this, and then you'd see a room here. So you're like, how the hell do I get to that room over here when the stairwell goes down and there's no like walk around to get to it here? And then there would be a fold down board that would come down and connect to the stairs and get you over to that room. And I remember the scariest part of that is we were really just worried about structural integrity. No matter if ghosts existed or not, structural integrity is always kind of very dangerous aspect of exploring old urban places that are broken down and dilapidated. On top of that, the whole time while we were exploring, there's a security guard outside who can call the police and have you get a trespassing warrant if you are caught while exploring this place. So we had that kind of tension, keeping our hearts a-thumping the whole time. We never got caught. I remember the main way that we kept ourselves pretty secret was because you had to have flashlights. There were no lights or anything to help us get through this place, but we had black shirts on, and we kept the flashlight under our black shirt to keep it really, really dim unless we needed a lot of light, and then we would take it out. So maybe that's a tip for urban exploring. I don't know. That was just us thinking of that on the spot. I don't know if that's necessary. We also wore masks just in case there was asbestos in there, because apparently there had been asbestos in there, and that's why it had been torn down. We weren't totally sure about that being rumor or truth, but I would advise, if you ever do that, to wear the asbestos mask no matter what, to keep yourself safe. So that was one of the scariest places I ever explored in America. Okay, last scariest story that I have for you, and this is from when I first got to Japan. Way before I was married, anything like that, no kids or anything yet, on my own with a friend from Australia who was also a big fan of a little horror game you may know as Fatal Frame, and it also has the title Project Zero. So if you don't know what that game is, go look it up right now. It's a very scary game where you take pictures of ghosts. The very first Fatal Frame that ever came out was about supposedly a true place. And so my friends and I investigated that, and the place was called Himuro Mansion. Okay, and so it was a for real mansion. I'm not talking like the Japanese style of mansion apartment where it's a tiny little one-room place. This was a real mansion. It's called a mansion because it was big like a normal mansion, but really it was old style tatami mats, shoji paper doors, and very old school. The doors can come off and open up the whole place. And we went there to explore it ourselves because we were big fans of the game and we were big fans of haunted places and we wanted to see ghosts. And we went to this place and it's in the middle of the woods. It is super creepy. Now, I've never seen a ghost in my entire life. I'm just going to be honest with you right there. Do I believe in ghosts? I believe in the possibility of ghosts. I believe in the possibility of anything supernatural because I feel even if you've never seen it, you should keep your mind open to it. I've never actually seen anything, any kind of haunting or anything like that. I've never seen anything supernatural appear to me. Now, that doesn't mean I don't believe other people's stories. I just never seen anything myself. When we were there, I had probably the scariest experience I've ever had as far as doing urban exploration and checking out a supposed haunted place. We went through there, and first of all, it's creepy as hell because it is filled to the brim with bugs. I mean, there's locusts everywhere in this old tatami mat rotting out Japanese mansion. And if you know the story behind it too, it's super freaking spooky. The story behind it is that there was a princess who lived there, and that princess was raised only for one thing, and she was raised for this binding ritual. And the binding ritual was a ritual in which they take the princess and continuously wrap her in rope, literally rope burning her whole body and wrapping her until the blood squeezes out of her body. And she's raised pure like that and wrapped until she bleeds out, because the blood is then supposed to create a barrier that doesn't let demons pass into this world. Sometimes they were tied to bridges to make the bridge secured and sealed from demons walking across the bridge and into the room, or the mansion, I should say. And this was what this whole thing was done for. So the story behind it was super creepy. It was, a freaky thing to begin with. Supposedly this princess had been wrapped in bind there. Now, if there's any truth behind that, is kind of left up to mystery. Historians kind of argue about that's totally not true. It is true, it's not true, whatever. I'm not a historian. I have no certification that makes me any kind of, quote-unquote specialist, professional, or professor about any of that stuff. I have no opinion other than I think it's a creepy-ass story. And so we're in there, and already you've got, while you're in there, the tension is just, you can cut it with a knife. It's so extreme. You feel creeped out the whole time you're there. I remember while I was there the whole time, I was there with one other friend only, my Australian friend, and we weren't holding hands, but we were holding on to each other's shirts, just so that we wouldn't lose each other in the darkness, because it was pitch black. There wasn't even any kind of city lights or anything like that around there. It was us and our flashlights. And we didn't turn on our car lights either, because we didn't want to show anybody where we were. That would have been too bright. And while we were out there, the scariest part was my friend was like, "Hey, can you stop right now? Because I need to go, pee in the woods, because I really got to go to the bathroom." The tension the whole time is squeezing your bladder, so I understood. I actually myself, at the very beginning when we got there, I went because I knew that would happen. I've had that feeling before. And I said, "Okay, I'll wait." And I waited for a bit. I stayed still because I wanted him to know exactly where I was when he came back. And while I was standing there waiting alone, I heard him go relieve himself. The sound of water obviously trickling down in the woods. And then he came back and he said, "Okay, I'm okay. Never mind. Let's go ahead and go." And I said to him right then, I said, what do you mean, never mind? Did you get to go or not? And he was like, "No, I couldn't really find a place. There was too many spider webs, and I started to get, bugs crawling all over me, so I just came back to you." And I was like, "Yeah, but I heard you going to the bathroom out there. I heard, water trickling." And he was like, "No, I assure you I didn't get a chance to go. I'm going to go when we get back to the car, because I know there's a space around there in the woods, and I'm not going to step into a bunch of bushes." So we explored the rest of the place, but when we got back, I told him again, I said, "Hey, look, when we were out there, I definitely heard water running, or something trickling down, water in the woods." And there is no kind of plumbing or anything out there. This is long before plumbing even existed, and irrigation hadn't even been planted out there, so it's not like someone left a faucet on. That's not possible. What that trickling water sound was, I will never know, but it was super creepy. And it's the closest thing I've ever had to a ghostly encounter. Anyway, that's my 3 stories of some of the creepiest times in my entire life. I hope you enjoyed this Osoroshi Saturday. I know it was a little unorthodox. Next week I will be returning with the same type of ghostly paranormal research type Osoroshi Saturday, so don't fear, it's not changing into something different. This is just a mix-up for right now. Also look forward to the fact that in the near future, hopefully near the end of August, around October, I'm going to be releasing my official Osoroshi Saturday movie. It's my full-length movie that is a horror movie. Right now I'm looking for some people to be in it. If you yourself are interested, please let me know. I would like to include you in the horror movie. I'm recording people, using people who are recording themselves on webcams and they're sending it in. I will put a link to the video that explains what you would need to do and how you would need to act to get yourself in the Osoroshi Saturday movie. Until next time, I am Unrested, and this is, ready? Osoroshi Saturday!